We're winding up, are we? Getting close? Well, I wondered if I could share an idea with you. The organizers of Reach came to me and said, would you share the most important message you could think of to the Reach audience on Thursday afternoon? I said, okay, I can do that in 30 seconds. And it is, buy toolkits. Thank you. Yeah, thanks. But they said I should take 18 minutes, so I thought, well, I'll add a message to that. And the title of my message is, How to Turn Really Bad Days into Really Good Data. And as I thought about this message, I thought it's one of the messages I have most passion about. Now, you need to understand a little background. I was born at a very early age, and my whole upbringing, my father was the consummate example of teaching people with respect. I don't think I inherited it, but I know I learned it from him. Teach people with respect. And I just knew that was something you did, though I didn't consciously turn it into a principle or a tool that I would practice. It's just how I kind of evolved, I guess. When it comes to the specific skills you've learned, I began a conscious study of them in 1979. And I've been studying them a long time. I've been trying to practice them, and one of the most important values to me is walk your talk. And if I'm teaching this stuff, I want to be living this stuff. And I've tried. I've written about it. I've trained. Many of you, we've had discussions about this. And in that context, I want to tell you what happened to me. And this is a mostly true story. I had what we call in the business a bad day. It began when my alarm didn't go off. I got up on the wrong side of the bed. I dropped my toast butter side down. Someone cut me off in traffic, and my stars were out of alignment. And that was before I even arrived at work. Then I got to work, and one of our staff members, with a gentle smile, gave me an article I had written back and said, let's try it again. Now, what she was thinking, she didn't say this, but what she was thinking is, if I wanted this caliber of writing, I could have gone to the second graders, and it would have been better. She didn't say that, but I know she was thinking that, right? And then, around noon, I got this horrific headache, one of those that pulse and pound. And then an emergency call from a client that was having a problem on an important project, and we talked that through. And as I was going home, I was totally exhausted. The headache hadn't gone, and so this is a bad day. What made it a really bad day is when I pulled up in the driveway, and there was my daughter Rachel, who had been driving for 4 weeks now, legally, and she said, Dad, I had a little bit of an accident. And she took me out to the car, and not only was the bumper smashed, but the trunk was smashed, and the back light was knocked out. They said it was $1,100 damage, and of course, I have a $1,000 deductible, right? I stood there, and I looked at her, and I said, what happened? She said, I accidentally bumped into the mailbox. Now, you've got to understand, where I live, we have a double-wide driveway. A double-wide driveway. You can do circles in the driveway and not hit anything. And the mailbox is 3 feet away from the edge of the driveway. To hit that mailbox, she had to be driving on grass for at least 20 feet before she hit the mailbox. I said, Rachel, what happened? And she said, I don't know. And I said, I would say you don't, except for the evidence. You can't get an accident like that against the mailbox unless you intentionally aimed for it. I said, Rachel, this is uncalled for. This is inexcusable. And then she got this really sicky sweet smile and said, Dad, you're not making me feel safe. I said, Rachel, I don't want you to feel safe. I want you to be sorry, I said. And then I turned around and said, you're not driving for a while. And she goes, how long? And I said, maybe forever. Now that outburst is what turned a bad day into a really bad day. We got a word for that. Right? This is called a bad day, a really bad day. Now let me tell you why this is especially bad. Because I've been studying and teaching this stuff so long. I mean, I should know better, right? I mean, I should be the perfect example of crucial conversation skills at every minute, and certainly at home, where I made the mistake of sharing some of these skills with my kids. And let me tell you, they don't do it all the time, but they catch me every time I mess up. That's why I decided one of the most important topics I could share with you is, what do you do when you have a really bad day? When you violate a skill you know, a principle you know. Janet, and I've never heard her name pronounced, but I believe it's Palevi. Can anyone correct me? It is. I declare it so. Janet Palevi, one of the world's leading researchers on diets, has discovered something she calls the what the hell effect. It has to do with how most dieters respond to failure. So I'm dieting, I'm working really hard at it, and I blow it. I stick that great big piece of chocolate cake in my mouth. One bite. And then I go, oh man, I blew it. How do most dieters respond, don't you trip, in that moment? You know what she found? They say in their mind, what the hell, I blew it, and they binge. So now I throw the whole diet out, I've blown it, right? I've messed up, and I binge. Right? Guess what happens to trainers when you violate a principle, when you don't use a skill when you know you should? We do something very similar, only it's much worse. Now, you're familiar with the book, Change Anything, and I want to use two principles out of that book to say, what do you do when you have a real bad day? The one is be the scientist and the subject. I'm the subject when I blow up at my daughter. To be a scientist, I almost have to step out and examine this. And for me, it's very hard, especially when I'm emotional, to do it in the moment. But I can do it afterwards. It's called holding an autopsy. And I say, why did the patient die, right? And I can start being the scientist, be a little more objective about, why did I do that? Why did it happen that way? Why did I say those things? The other principle is turn bad days into good data. That means learn from what happened, right? You're a trainer. You have a really bad day, and it might have been in the classroom where you didn't do an exercise right. It might have been at work or at home where you didn't live the principles, where you weren't practicing what you preach. Those are both really bad days for trainers. And what do we tell ourselves? I can't believe I just said that. I'm supposed to teach these things, and I can't even live them myself. What a hypocrite I am. Have you ever stood in front of a group to teach them something, and this little voice in your head says, you're such a hypocrite. You don't do what you're telling them. It's an icky feeling. It's an icky feeling. And this is telling ourselves a hurtful story. Now, you know about villain stories, victim stories, helpless stories. Hurtful stories can encompass those, and sometimes they can just be phrases. And sometimes it's not saying I'm helpless, and sometimes it's not saying I'm without responsibility. It's just beating yourself up, saying, you're such a hypocrite. What an idiot. Why did you say that? And it becomes really hard to say, how do I turn those stories around? Because at the time, I believe they're true. They feel true, right? So, turn bad days into good data. What happens when you fail? Discouragement means you're telling yourself a hurtful story. So when you go, I don't know how I can even walk back in that classroom, okay? They don't know what I said to my daughter, but I know what I said to my daughter. How can I preach these things when I don't live them? Well, that's the bad story, the hurtful story that creates discouragement. And it can affect your training. It can affect your teaching. It can affect all your relationships. It can affect your self-image, that I'm not the person I wanted to be or thought I could be or should be. Whenever you're feeling discouragement, when you're having those thoughts go through your head, know this. You're being the subject. You're being the experience. You're being the emotions. To be the scientist, you have to step out of that and analyze. The scientist turns bad days into good data by analyzing what happened there. Why did I do that? What am I thinking? If you find yourself acting discouraged because of a bad day, you need to catch yourself. That's a red flag. Saying, all right, you made a mistake. You blew it. Okay? Let's call that a fact. Okay? The successful changers we studied in Change Anything, you know how they responded to blowing their diet or not walking their talk? They respond with curiosity instead of condemnation. Why did I do that? I've been doing so well on my diet. Why did I eat that piece of chocolate cake? Why did I say that to my daughter? They become the scientists studying their own behavior. Most of us believe that what we feel is real and it is us. Did you know you can stand apart from what you feel and say, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? Why am I doing this? And that's now trying to be objective about your subjective experience. And it's a capability that we as humans have. It's a self-awareness. And we don't often use it. Often we're in autopilot, just going to the next thing to check off the list. But this requires some reflection. Fortunately, we have tools to analyze this. Can I share with you one of my favorite? And you all know this tool. It's in your toolkit, Crucial Conversations Toolkit. Remember the left-hand column, right-hand column case? What's in the right-hand column? What was said. And literally recreate the conversation. Write it down. Okay, what did I say to Rachel? What did she say? Write it down. That's why doing it soon after the mistake is good, because it's fresh on your mind, you can remember. Now in the course, we say the left-hand column is what I was thinking and feeling but didn't say. And that's to help us become more aware of what's going on in our head that doesn't make it into the conversation but drives what we do, correct? I alter this just a little bit. Instead of what I was thinking or feeling but didn't say, I just put what I was thinking and feeling. Maybe I said it, maybe I didn't. But let's chronicle it. What was I thinking when I said this? What was I feeling when I said this? And now you recreate the conversation on a page and you can analyze it. What skill could I have used? When should I have used it? What was the mistake I made? And this is analyzing your mistake. And this is turning a bad day into good data. So you have a bad day. How can you, the scientist, use that bad day to help you, the subject, move forward? Use it to discover crucial moments. I don't treat my daughter disrespectfully all the time. So why was it that time? What was going on at that moment that would cause me to be disrespectful to her? Well, I was tired and worn down. To misquote Shakespeare, fatigue makes cowards of us all. Okay. When I get tired, when I get run down, it's really hard to be on my best. It really is. That's a crucial moment for me. When I'm tired and run down, I ought to be on the lookout, because here's where I start to fail. The second thing is when I get surprised by bad news. $1,000. You know how many deep dish Pizza Hut pizzas I could buy for $1,000? That's how I measure value, translated into food. Yeah. Well, begin to realize that when I'm surprised by bad news, I don't always act that way. When I'm at my best, what do? I ask questions. I say, what accident? What do you mean? What happened? But when I'm surprised by bad news and I'm run down and fatigued, then I get irritated, angry, frustrated, and upset, and I take it out on someone. What I really want is to vent and make someone feel sorry rather than solve problems and build relationships. So, you identify your crucial moments. When are you most likely to fail? As scientist and subject, when examining personal behavior, you want to do two things. Number one, identify crucial moments. When is this likely to happen? Number two, what are the vital behaviors I need to do in those crucial moments? For me, it's ask questions. Ask questions gives me more information, gives me a chance to process it, gives me a chance to calm down a bit before I respond. So after a really bad day, what do you tell yourself? Here's my prescription. Bad days help me identify what to improve. I'm trying to get better and better. I'm trying to grow and develop. Bad days actually help me do that. They help me identify what needs improvement. Analyzing them helps me figure out how to improve them. And so a little tool like right-hand, left-hand column, recount the conversation, think it through. You know a lot about crucial conversations. Analyze. Okay? Where did I make the mistake? What could I have done differently? Identifying the problem gives me the what to improve. Analyzing the problem helps me figure out how to improve. Now this one, sometimes you may want to call someone else that you know that teaches this, that's certified, that's gone through it, and talk it over with them. Get an outside, truly subjective opinion. And the next thing I want you to tell yourself is creating a plan for improvement helps me avoid repeating my mistake. This is how you turn bad days into good data. Does that make sense? What we require of you as certified trainers, master trainers, is not perfection. It's be making progress. Be making progress, and this is a formula or a way of doing that. Using these principles turn hurtful stories into hopeful stories. And instead of despondency, frustration, despair, you say, man, I can do this. I got to get back on the horse, and I got to try again. So, putting it all together, you need to answer these questions for yourself. How will you be both the scientist and the subject? How will you turn bad days into good data? How will you keep becoming the person you want the world to be? See, if I could have these lights turned down, I want to share with you a story that is of one of my heroes. And just these lights right here on the screen, if we kind of have, oh, that's nice. Yeah, that's much better. Thank you. My hero moved to Cambridge, was a professor of modern languages at Harvard, and his name is Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. And he had the love of his life, Fanny. Many people said the reason God put them on earth is to show us all what a loving couple looks like. And they were deeply in love, had 6 children. His favorite time of the year was Christmas, when the family had a lot of traditions that brought them together, and it was a joyous, fun, exciting time. Well, one July, Fanny got too close to an open flame, and the linen and gossamers she was wearing went up in flame. She caught fire. Henry heard her screams come running through the house, saw her aflame, threw her down, rolled a carpet on top of her, laid on top of her, patted the flames out, and in the process was badly burned himself. 3 days later, on their 18th wedding anniversary, Fanny died and was buried. Henry was unable to attend the funeral because his burns were so severe. From that point, the rest of his life, he grew a beard to hide the scars on his face and faced the coming Christmas of that year of 1859 with regret and pain. And it was a bittersweet time because he had his family, but he didn't have his Fanny. And he prepared gifts, and he wanted to make it as wonderful a Christmas as he could. But his mind kept reflecting back on the funeral that he missed and the love that lay buried. He had prepared gifts for all the children, and he did all of the rituals that Fanny would do, all the preparations. He even gave each of the kids a gift from Mother to let them know that she loved him and to keep her in their thoughts. That next year, 1861, his heart was broken again as the Civil War broke out, and he heard of Americans killing Americans. Henry sorely grieved about that horrific event. And in the spring of that year, his oldest son, 18-year-old Charlie, said he wanted to enlist, and Henry forbid it. You will not enlist in war. This family cannot suffer through another loss. So Charlie ran away and enlisted in the war. Henry was deeply disappointed and hurt, but as soon as he located him, he started writing letters, sending money, and sending poetry to inspire Charlie and buoy him up. Then on December 1st of that year, Henry got news that his son Charlie had been severely wounded. A bullet had passed through both shoulders, and they didn't know if he'd make it. Henry immediately sped to Washington, D.C., and for 3 days looked through hospitals and homes and tented encampments trying to find his son. He finally located him on the verge of death, began taking care of him the best he could, getting him medicines, and as soon as he could, he got him home to Cambridge. And there he changed his bandages, cleaned the wounds, and Christmas came. The reason I'm sharing with you this story is I want you to understand how Henry Wadsworth Longfellow dealt with stories in his head and emotions in his heart. He made the usual Christmas preparations, wondering if they could really celebrate Christmas this time around, but wanting to preserve these traditions and the memory of their mother. And he made the preparations. And then, when everyone was in bed, house was quiet, he began putting pen to paper, and he wrote the most famous poem of his career. I'd like you to read it with me. I heard the bells on Christmas Day, their old familiar carols play, and wild and sweet the words repeat of peace on earth, goodwill to men. I thought how as the day had come, the belfries of all Christendom had rolled along the unbroken song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Till ringing, singing on its way, the world revolved from night to day, a voice, a chime, a chant sublime of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And then he wrote some stanzas that you're not familiar with. Some of you may have never read these. Most of you, all of you, have never heard them sung. Then from each black, accursed mouth, the cannon thundered in the south, and with the sound the carols drowned of peace on earth, goodwill to men. It was as if an earthquake rent the hearthstones of a continent and made forlorn the households born of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And in despair, I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said, for hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. I almost picture him stopping at that point in his writing and looking at what he wrote and feeling what he felt and said, what do I really believe? I believe he had just written the words of a realist. And I believe he chose the story of an optimist. And then he wrote, then pealed the bells more loud and deep, God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men. We live in scary times. We live in times of war and rumors of war. We live in times where children die of starvation. How in a modern world like this could that happen? It shouldn't be so. And we have reason to despair and bow our heads and realistically see that hate is strong and do nothing but mourn. But I want you to remember the words we heard yesterday. Dr. Bandura, we can hang our heads in despair, or we can overcome the phantom of fear-based reluctance. We can realize that we have the tools to improve results in relationships, don't we? We have the tools to resolve conflict and create mutual purpose. We have the tools to influence and create profound, positive, lasting change, don't we? Our requirement of you as certified trainers and master trainers is not be perfect, but be progressing. Let these things work for you and in you to create an unshakable belief in your efficacy to make a difference and a firm belief in the worth of that endeavor is my hope and my prayer. Thank you.